Kathryn Barger. She is the chair of the board. All right, you came out against this. Give us a status update on where things are at, why you're against this, and whether anything can be done at this point.
Well, the status is tomorrow we have a set item at 10:30 where we're going to ask Dr. Ferrer to come and brief us. And ultimately, as a public health officer, she has separate authority to issue public health orders. But I'm hoping that I, and hopefully some of my colleagues, can convince her that this is not the right path to take. When you look at the numbers, by the public health's own account, 10 to 15% can be traced to restaurants, and it's not a perfect science, so that's an estimate. But yet we know over 50% of those that are testing positive got it while they were at large gatherings. And I just feel that this is punishing an industry that has bent over backwards to comply.
And most of those people are young and are not not dying. People aren't dying. Plus, our treatments are getting so much better. People aren't dying, and the hospitals aren't being overloaded. So, what's the hurry? Why the rush? Why the rush to further upend the mental health and the financial health of large swaths of the population? Shouldn't it be harder for her to do that? Shouldn't she have to stand up and defend her decisions based on some published science? Shouldn't other physicians have the opportunity to sort of question that? Shouldn't it be more difficult?
Well, first of all, we had 6,000 today. I mean, we are definitely, the numbers are going up. But to your point, Drew, when we reopened last time, hospitalization was a little less than where we are now, and the positive rate was actually greater the first time we reopened.
So we're actually doing better now than during this massive, sudden panic-driven, these numbers, these 4,500, 4,000, which are completely arbitrary. Many other urban centers are well above that per capita.
But make no mistake, and the virus is in the community. We know that.
Yep.
So it's important for people to act responsible. And if you are in that high risk, you shouldn't be going out.
Of course.
But close down one industry based on really what you say, show me the science, based on no science, concerns me. And I feel it's arbitrary and it's punitive to an industry. You just saw, Schumann's report. They invested thousands of dollars to comply with public health and probably have purchased a lot of food to serve for reservations. The Derby in Arcadia has purchased a lot of food and is now being told you can't have customers.
Right. So let's bring Phil back in a moment, but let me just follow up on what he asked. Who is in charge? Who makes this call? Can she make that call by herself? Does the board have to support this? Because last week we heard from Supervisor Hahn on our show that the board supported this idea of if you get 4,000 cases a day average over 5 days, that we would have this restaurant ban. And then if it went over 4,500, it would be a stay-at-home order.
Right. She sort of threw her hands up and said, well, that's what the public health person tells us.
Well, but she also said that the board supported that. Yep. So did the board support that last week? And why did they?
And that is a good question. So two things. Number one, the board did. The board said we're going to revise the public health orders, which was done. We were also going to alert the public that if we reached a certain number, these were the steps that were going to be taken. Over the weekend, Dr. Ferrer wanted to release that information saying we are going to close on Wednesday. I felt that should not be released until we have an opportunity in public to discuss this. Janice has said, the Supervisor Hahn has said the same thing, that this should be discussed in public. I personally feel that we are rushing into a situation that for many of these restaurants, it's going to be the final blow and they're not going to open. And if I did this, I would be the first to say that we need to do what's right. But in this case, everything I'm hearing is not showing me that this is in fact the right path to take. In addition to that, I am now of the opinion that we need to bring in experts. We've got USC, UCLA, Caltech, people that are on the forefront dealing with this virus in real time. Maybe it's time for us to get input from people that can offer us really a holistic approach to this based on therapeutics, based on the vaccine, based on hospitalization, and actually those that are getting it that are finding themselves asymptomatic and no impact once they recover.
Phil Schumann.
So I do that. But public health, make no mistake, she is the ultimate, and it's not even her, it's Dr. Davis is the public health officer who signs all these public health orders. That is separate. They have the full authority to do that, but they do it in consultation with the Board of Supervisors.
Phil Schuman.
All right, give me a letter grade on how you think the county has handled the pandemic since the beginning, the county as a whole.
Wow, I think that early on, I would give us a B because I believe that we were navigating something that no one really knew what this virus was about. I think now we are sliding down and not being as responsive as I believe we should be, we the county, in terms of recognizing the impact it's having on businesses. But I still think that I would say a B- because we are moving aggressively forward on getting the testing out there. We are putting together protocols to get the vaccine to frontline and doing all that. So I believe we've done okay, but I know that there's room for improvement.
Well, let me ask you this. So it's shocking to me to hear you say in late November that you think we should assemble a panel of experts when you have the county public health department with 4,000 people. You have one of the top public health officials in Barbara Ferrer available, who, by the way, is not a medical doctor. She's a PhD. And you have all these other medical experts. And now you're suggesting that we need to form a panel of outside experts? Doesn't express much confidence in county public health.
So, Phil, what I will tell you is that I would love to own this idea, but actually USC came to me and offered it and felt that they had value added. And I talked to them last week about this. So this is something that was not something that I woke up and said, I think we're going to do this. Clearly, Dr. Ferrer and Dr. Davis, and you're right, Dr. Ferrer is a PhD, Dr. Davis is a public health officer, but I do believe based on the therapeutics that are moving forward, the vaccine that's coming forward.
That's right.
And, this is going to be in the community well past 2020. And it's time for us to really recognize that we need to have a long-term strategy moving forward. And I believe that bringing together experts to put us in that direction is a smart move.
And Phil, I'm telling you that there's concern in my profession about the way decisions are being made by public health, not taking into account therapeutics, the way we're encouraging hospitalizations, the profound mental health impact, the financial well-being of the population, the overall health is being ignored, and things seem very precarious and arbitrary. And so I'm delighted that a group came forward and to help the county, because we need exactly that, Phil. It's clear that that's necessary now, and I wouldn't blame the county supervisors for that at all.
But to follow up on Phil's
my last
point,
question,
go ahead, Phil.
Okay. No, I'm just going to say one last question is that does the supervisor recognize the confusion and perhaps even a lack of confidence in our leadership on behalf of the public, on behalf of business owners, if over the weekend we have this major announcement for Barbara Ferrer, and then on Monday, the chairman of the board of supervisors, who she works for, is 100% opposed to her decision? Shouldn't this discussion have been held before she made such an important announcement?
Right. I mean, Barbara Ferrer is making over $400,000 in taxpayer money. The county is spending millions of dollars to hire a PR firm to help with the messaging. Isn't this a major messaging mistake?
So in answer to Phil's question, yes, as chair, last week it was discussed, not in public, it was discussed by Dr. Ferrer bringing it to the board. Which is why I didn't want to move forward with the announcement over the weekend. I felt we needed to have this discussion because I have serious concerns. I am not a wallflower. I will not sit back. If I don't feel something's right, I will stand up for what I believe. And while I am chair, I am one of 5. And I run the board meetings and I have authority over executive authorization and all. But on this one, I'm speaking out as a 5th District Supervisor, but also as a concerned citizen who's listening to constituents and friends who are concerned about what their future is going to bring and their employees. I have one restaurant who told me he's going to have to lay off about 34 employees tomorrow, and he's not sure they're going to be able to come back.
This is upending so many lives, and I want to address what Phil and Elex both were saying. Listen, the LA County Board of Supervisors are not experts in health messaging. They're supposed to get that from the health department, and the health messaging has been so far off. It's like we've abandoned everything we know about health messaging, and I don't know why, and I don't believe that anybody on the Board of Supervisors would have known that, because you're not medical experts, you're not health messaging experts, but this is not the problem. Today is not the issue. It's been going on for quite some time.
Well, as it relates to the public PR firm that was brought on, early on we brought them on because we had to put Safer at Home into play within less than 2 weeks. So it was important for us to get our messaging out and try to help people understand why we're doing this. And quite frankly, early on, people were very understanding and were willing to comply with that request. Now you've got COVID fatigue where people are fed up. We close, we open, we close, we open. It stands to reason numbers go down. Once you open, they go back up. So the question is, do we do messaging that educates the public about the fact that masks truly do protect you and the person you're talking to? And social distancing also does that.
Right.
And to that point, I believe, and I know that my colleagues would probably agree, we need to get messaging out there, both in English, Spanish, Armenian, Korean, Chinese, every language there is, because people are not getting it.
Phil got the message.
Phil got the message. I'm putting on my mask as well.
You got mine?
We are
Why
big,
not?
we are
Put it
big
down.
believers that masks work here. Supervisor, will you stay with us for the next segment? We've got more we want to talk about.
I don't know if I can handle Phil for another segment, but yes.
Phil's going away, but we'll
get
be
rid of
back
Phil.
when we come back. Stay with us.
Okay.
We are back with Supervisor Kathryn Barger, the chair of the LA County Board of Supervisors. Let's talk for a moment about the possibility of bringing back a safer at home order. The board has said that if the numbers go over 4,500 cases a day for 5 days average, that we would be back to safer at home, similar to what we saw in March. Today I talked with Governor Newsom about the idea of the curfew, and he said the idea of doing a statewide lockdown doesn't really make sense. We've learned a lot more than when we were back then, and we can do things in a more targeted approach. Do you agree with that? And do other people on the board agree with you?
Well, I haven't talked to my colleagues about what the governor said, but based on what you just said, I'd like to check what he means, but it makes sense to me. I mean, I think that we've come a long way with the therapeutics, with how we're dealing with COVID, and wearing face masks and social distancing. I mean, outdoor eating actually has shown that it slows the spread. So I believe we've come a long way from when this first hit LA County. So I believe that we need to really be more rational in how we move forward, recognizing that that there is help on the way. But in the meantime, we have to learn how to coexist with this virus and ensure that we are not infecting the most vulnerable, the people in skilled nursing facilities, those with pre-existing conditions, and we are, taking care of our hospitals to make sure that they've got the capacity, which to date, I'm told they do.
So on the Board of Supervisors, it takes 3 votes because there's 5 of you, right? And we've heard that Supervisor Hahn is in agreement with a lot of what you're saying here tonight. Supervisors Sheila Kuehl, Mark Ridley-Thomas, also Hilda Solis, what's their argument? What are they saying to you behind the scenes? Why do they not agree with this?
Well, for the most part, I mean, we all support public health because this has been a challenge as it relates to really getting a handle on it. But we have disagreed on some of the ways that we're going about addressing the policy side of it. I have not talked to my colleagues, in part because that would be violating the Brown Act. But from what I've read in the paper and the quotes I've seen, at least from Supervisor Kuehl and Supervisor Solis, I don't believe they are in agreement with me as it relates to targeting one industry and shutting it down is going to slow the spread. I don't understand why it doesn't make sense for them to question public health on coming up with a decision to close down restaurants that there is no direct correlation between the spike that's taking place and the restaurants that are operating.
Exactly. That's why, again, I just keep thinking it should be harder for these sorts of decisions to be made. There at least should be sort of a procedure or an evaluation. That's why I was so happy to hear you say that there's SC wants to put together a panel with all the experts in the area, because the approach seems so narrow and arbitrary now, and it seems like your colleagues are just going with it.
Well, and again, and to Phil's point, I mean, early on, put a panel together. Everyone was trying to figure this virus out, but now we know what therapeutic drugs meet. I mean, I've talked to my doctor, who's amazing, who's talked to me about what he's learned since March.
Sure.
I believe now is the time to have a roadmap moving forward, especially if we're going to have a vaccine coming out, so that we do it in a way that is making sense and is really going to benefit the residents of LA County.
Well, Supervisor, we cannot tell you how much we appreciate the fact that you come on the show because this is such an important issue, and to have an opportunity to talk directly and ask you questions on one of the biggest issues of the day, I think means so much. And we welcome the other supervisors as well because we would love to hear their perspective. This is such a key thing, and we want to have a respectful dialogue. So thank you for sharing your views.
I agree.
Thank you. And, I just want to say, I think part of it, and I've worked with Bill Schuman, but I have to say his sentiment comes as a result of talking to owners, which I've done over the weekend. And when you hear the emotional toll that it is on these owners, you can't help but be outraged. So I get where his frustration and where his questions are coming from, and I accept that. But I think that we have to have open dialogue as a board and hear from people like the owner. Call in, make your voice heard.
Yeah.
And we could be vaccinated within a few weeks here.
And if one of those other three supervisors are your supervisor, let them know that you disagree with this, and maybe public sentiment can drive democracy as it's supposed to.
Amen.
Supervisor Barger, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Paul.
Bye.
Show me the science. Show me the science.
Show me the science. That's our new thing. All right, we'll be right back.